This is Justin Lanero from the Disturbing the Peace podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our featured presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 292, soundtracks that were better than the movie. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week, we decided to take a look at some soundtracks that were actually better than the movie that they were in. We're going to do a top 5 list for you. And really, who better to join us than our resident music expert and regular guest, Greg Martin. Greg, welcome back to the show, my friend. It's good to have you.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad to be back. I got to tell you, normally when you guys give me a topic to work on, it's bam, bam, bam. I know right away what I want to talk about, everything that. I literally spent this last week like going through like soundtracks to see if any earworms would kick off. Like, oh yeah, I remember how good that album was, and this and that, this and that. So it took me a while. Like I think I only mailed in my picks, I think yesterday. Finally, I was able to find the 5 that I'm like, yeah, I gotta go with those, because it was a tough topic, but it was a lot of fun, man. I enjoyed the research. I got to go back in time and listen to a whole bunch of different soundtracks I haven't heard in a long time, so it was really good.
Awesome. Well, before we get to our topic this week, Derek, anything new in the world of pop culture for you, my friend?
So much like last week, I have a very short list. So as I mentioned at the top of the last show, as the weather's getting nicer, I'm spending more time outside. I'm spending more time, we got a swimming pool in the backyard. And in the winter, normally when I do my exercise, I do them in front of a TV. But now that I can go outside, I'm not spending nearly as much time in front of the TV. So I only had a chance this week to watch one thing, but it was a 4-part documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
4 parts. So that's good. That's like 4 different things, I guess.
Well, I got 4 one-hour episodes, sort of something to watch before bed every night. So, you know me, I'm a big fan of Las Vegas and gambling and all the things that come with Las Vegas. Well, this one is called Vegas, The Story of Sin City. It's 4 one-hour episodes. It was originally on CNN, and they reran it not too long ago, so I managed to catch all 4 on my PVR. And it's a pretty involved history of the city and everything that goes with it, and it basically covers everything from the inception of Las Vegas until basically today. And they do it in a really interesting way. Like I've seen a lot of stuff on the history of Vegas. There's been a lot of movies about people like Bugsy, who are pivotal in sort of those early years of Las Vegas. And I've seen other documentaries about a lot of the people that helped Vegas get started. But this one was more of sort of broad strokes across the whole thing. But it actually really spent a lot of time focusing on the importance of entertainment in Vegas and the performers and the singers and the comedians and the later on they had like Cirque du Soleil and just the way that entertainment drove ticket sales and how people would then travel to Vegas, not necessarily to gamble first, but to partake in the entertainment. And then once they're there to see whether it's Elvis or whether it's Celine Dion or whether it's Britney Spears or whoever it might be, depending on the year, once the show's over, of course they're going to gamble. And they talk about how it was unlike any other idea. Like Vegas was groundbreaking in so many ways, but they talk about how just having a resident and like a huge named performer that you could only see in Las Vegas over and over again, how it was like a new concept when it was first introduced. And it was really, really fascinating. And of course they do it chronologically. So every episode sort of covers, 10 to 15 years or so. And I actually found the one that I enjoyed the least was the last one, simply because it covered sort of my lifespan, which I'm very familiar with how Vegas has gone on in the last 20 years, because I've been going to Vegas for 20 years. But for anyone who's never been, or people who aren't as familiar as I am, if you're interested in Vegas, but specifically you're interested in the history of the entertainment of Vegas, I would say definitely check this one out. It's called Vegas, The Story of Sin City, 4 one-hour episodes on CNN. It was really good. I really enjoyed it, both as a documentary and as a Vegas aficionado. It was great. I loved it.
And it's interesting because over the years, like you said, it's changed kind of who the headliners were or the residents there. But there have been some that have just been there since almost day one, like when I think of like Wayne Newton.
Wayne Newton and Paul Anka, they interviewed so many people that are obviously any of the people that are interviewing are still alive, but like so many of these people, and they say like, oh, like there's one woman they interview and she was a showgirl for like 10 years, and she was there when the Rat Pack was there, she was there when Elvis was there, and like there were all these pictures of her with all these performers, and like she was a somebody, and a lot of these performers talked about that and their interactions with these other performers, and like they talked about Liberace and they talked about Elvis Presley, and you don't realize how important some of these entertainers were to the growth of Vegas. No, it was really good.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. When I was there, I went to see Rich Little. I dragged my wife.
Oh, he was in there too. They talked to him.
Yeah. And my wife was like, what are we doing here at this dumb thing? And there was like 35 people there, if there was like hardly anybody there. But I wanted to go. So there's what it is. Greg, how about you? You've been able to take in any pop culture recently you can share with us?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time at the movies because I have the Landmark Cinema card, so I go like all the time. So I got like a whole list of movies. I'm not going to go into great detail about all of them because we'll be here forever. So I'll just kind of give a brief overview of things I liked, things I didn't, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So first off was The Fall Guy. Went to see that. That didn't overwhelm me. I'd rather watch Heather Thomas on the TV show.
Yes.
It was not. Yeah. I don't know, man. Just. It fell a little flat for me. I didn't care for it. I thought it was one of those ones that you can wait for the movie networks. Didn't need to run out and see it. Took the kids to go see If, the new Ryan Reynolds movie. Starts off a bit slow, but once it gets going, really enjoyed it. Was good. Could have been better, but it wasn't too bad. Just you got to give it a few minutes to get going. Like I'd say about 20 minutes or so. And then once it gets going, it gets moving. Although some of the topics in there I found were a little hard-hitting for kids. My kids had a lot of questions after the movie, so just be prepared. Let's see, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which if you're like a Planet of the Apes fan like myself, like you go see anything Planet of the Apes related, you'll enjoy it. They made this ape movie for the ape fans. It's really well done, really good story. First story in the new trilogy that they're going to be putting out, and it started off really well. So if you like that, go see it. I also went to see Furiosa, which is
no spoilers, man. No spoilers.
No spoilers. I won't spoil it. I'm just going to tell you, man, fantastic, really well done. George Miller, that guy knows how to make a post-apocalyptic car chase movie. Great stuff. And if you like The Road Warrior, you're going to enjoy Furiosa because it has a really good Road Warrior feel to it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done. Definitely check out Furiosa. I also went to see...
Hold on. Isn't that starring the girl from The Queen's Gambit?
Hey, no spoilers, no spoilers.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, no, there's no spoilers.
You know who's in it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, I only know her. Don't tell me about anybody else.
No.
I'm asking about her.
But I'm telling you, Derek, go see it. You'll love it. It's great.
Oh, yeah, it's on my list. We're going to go this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done.
I hate to spoil it, but she doesn't play chess in it.
No, she doesn't. No, it's kind of hard to play chess when the cars are moving that fast.
Just spoil it for Derek.
So I went to see Back to Black, which is a biopic sort of about Amy Winehouse. Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. It's just one of those ones, again, where they fail to really tell you how deep in a hole she got into. They sort of gloss over it and paint over it. Like, they didn't really get into the dirty and the nitty-gritty about it. I, myself and my wife got to witness it firsthand. We went to an MTV taping here in MTV Canada, and she was the guest that day. And she showed up like an hour and 15 minutes late. And when she came in, she was so zoned out, so spaced out. She was inaudible. She couldn't answer the questions. She just kept staring off into space and looking around. And it was one of the worst interviews I ever seen. I felt so bad for the people interviewing her. I have no idea why they even aired it. Like, it was that bad. But anyways, that Back to Black movie, not worth it. Don't go see it. I also saw Tarot, which was so stupid. I wish somebody read my cards and told me not to go see it. And I also went to see Strangers Chapter 1. And I liked it the first time when it was called Strangers. So that's my roundup of movies. As you can tell, I've been to the movies a lot lately. So I just came back from vacation, so I got to find cheap alternatives to spending my day. So Landmark Cinema Card, cheap day.
Nice. People still go to the movies.
Yep.
So my wife and I went to see Jerry Seinfeld. So that was kind of an interesting thing. I mean, the guy's an icon, like in regard to 90s pop culture, at least. Derek, you were never a huge fan of the show Seinfeld, I remember, but...
No, it was sort of, when Greg and I were at school, it was on. But again, when you're at university, like sitting down in front of the TV in a weeknight is not really your top priority. So it sort of was happening behind the scenes. I've caught it in the reruns, and I've probably seen most of the episodes by now. But for me, I find it's really hit or miss. And it's very much of a time. Like, you watch it now, it's very dated in the 90s, which is fine. But I actually I've seen Seinfeld perform, I think, twice now, because my brother really enjoys him, and we usually go together when he shows up. So I think we saw him performing at Casino-Rama like 5 years ago, maybe. And again, it was fine. I mean, he wouldn't be my number one choice to go see, especially because I know he charged a lot of money for tickets, but he's fine. But what about you? What'd you think of the show? You're a bigger fan than I am.
Well, yeah, like I say, I'm a big fan of his show, so I really wanted to go see him. So I thought it was pretty good. You know, he did a real mix of his old material and some new stuff. And, you know, he was talking about his life at home, and then it reminded me, like, he started dating his wife when she was like 17. He was like in his 30s. So, and
I said that to somebody the other day. Yeah. I said, you know what, man, if he had done that in this day and age, man, that guy would have been obliterated off the planet. He got away with a lot with that.
Yeah, well, he's gotten himself in a little bit of hot water recently because he's made comments about like woke culture and he's like, oh, you can never do an edgy TV show these days. But, you know, I would recommend to him, maybe he has a conversation with his old collaborator, Larry David, because he just wrapped up Curb Your Enthusiasm literally like a month ago, which was totally edgy. It seemed to do okay, you know, in this woke culture. I guess, you know, regardless of how much of a tool you think Jerry Seinfeld may or may not be, I loved his sitcom. I did. You know, it got me thinking too, like maybe just everyone else was funny and he was just kind of at the center of it all. Because I also liked his show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. And when I mentioned it to my wife, and she's like, I never heard of that before. And I was telling her about it. Like, it's basically comedians telling Jerry Seinfeld jokes. So again, you know, other people are funny around him. It's like a theme going on here. I don't know. So anyway, I got to see Jerry Seinfeld doing his stand-up routine. So, you know, we had great seats too. We were at the second row from the stage. Pretty cool. So wow. That was good. Okay, I got this for you.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
So guys, since I mentioned Jerry Seinfeld and Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, I thought I'd tell a joke from that show. It's one that Bob Einstein told to Jerry Seinfeld on the show. Now, if you know Bob Einstein, he was one of the funniest human beings on the planet, I believe. He was Super Dave Osborne. If you're not aware, yep. You know. So anyway, so he one of the episodes he told some dirty jokes too. I'm not going to tell one of the dirty ones. I'm going to keep it clean.
Oh, come on. You're going to get bleeped anyway.
He told some so funny dirty jokes, but I'm not going to go there. So mine is so instead of it just being like a punchline joke, it's like a story. Okay, joke. So I'm going to tell you. Okay, so an Arab is crawling along the desert, burning up. He's like, water, water, water. And he comes up to a Jewish tie salesman and he says, water. The Jewish tie salesman says, I don't have any water. I got a tie. You want to buy a tie? Arab says, no, I don't want to buy a tie. I need water. So the Jewish salesman says, 40 miles to the west, there's an inn. You can get water there. Arab goes off. 3 days later, Arab comes crawling back. His face is on fire. Water, water. Jewish tie salesman says to him, didn't you get any water at the inn? And the Arab says, they wouldn't let me in without a tie.
We should tie you up for telling that joke.
But you know me, Derek. I'm the champion of Gen X pop culture.
Simpsons did it. Yeah. Simpsons did it. Yeah.
Man, that Beyonce sure is hot.
I'm already not comfortable where this is going. But okay.
You've got Male, M-A-L-E.
There we go.
Very good. Okay.
Jeez.
Figure that one out on your own.
You may have some explaining about your internet history.
No kidding. We did it in Canada first.
I overlooked the obvious answer there.
All right. Half of you men run over to the town square, and the others will run with mucus. All right, I mentioned at the top, we're going to do soundtracks that were better than the movie this week. And Derek, you wanted to set some parameters on this for us, or just kind of explain, because you're the one that came up with this topic. So why don't you just kind of set the stage for us?
So we ended up sort of combining two topics. It was a discussion, and then we were sort of, let's make it a little easier. So at first we talked about what is a good movie that has a great soundtrack. And we're like, well, that's all well and good. And then we're like, well, what if we made it a little bit easier? And we're like, what's a terrible movie that has a great soundtrack? And we're like, yeah, that's true too. So we sort of combine those two. So some of our picks are going to be the worst movies you've ever heard of with an outstanding soundtrack, where you just sort of like, how did those musicians not have the wherewithal to just say, I don't want to be affiliated with this movie, it's so bad. And then other ones where you're like, oh, that movie was okay. And then you're like, wow, but that soundtrack was great. So we're going to get a little bit of a mishmash of those two things combined. Again, the idea here is that these are iconic soundtracks that are full of great songs, and each, we'll talk about why they're great. But one of the restrictions that we sort of put on it was we didn't want to just pick a soundtrack that was simply, a greatest hits of its time. So say, for example, a movie like Forrest Gump, where the soundtrack is just, the absolute greatest hits through the 60s and 70s and 80s, because that's sort of what the movie's about. Like, that's kind of a cheat. We wanted soundtracks that were more of the moment, of when the movie came out. In many cases, there's going to be a lot of songs that were composed specifically for those movies. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of where we wanted to go. We don't just want to say like, that movie was like, I looked at one of the ones, again, I'm not sure what you guys have on the list, so I don't want to step on anyone's things, but like I looked at a movie where it's like a teenage party movie, and the soundtrack is like 20 bangers in a row, and you're like, holy crap, like these are some amazing party songs. Again, they were all big hits well before the movie came out and had nothing to do. That's just a coincidence they're on the soundtrack. So we kind of want to do it the other way, where it's like these soundtracks are great, and in many cases the songs on these soundtracks, that's the only place you ever found them, or they were hits because they were on the soundtrack, and then like maybe when the artist put out their solo album the next year or 6 months later, it showed up on there as well, kind of thing. Now, obviously it's not going to be the case in every single pick, but that's sort of the discussion we were having. Right. And obviously there's always one or two that sort of fall outside of that, but that was sort of the general parameters.
And I definitely stuck to that. I wanted to make sure that the soundtrack of the film that I picked, there was at least one or multiple songs that were written just for that film.
Exactly.
So that was important.
Exactly.
But I took it a step further, because I wanted to make sure that these were like great soundtracks, at least in my opinion, from what I consider to be bad movies. So I really wanted to kind of go that way too. But anyway, with the top 5 list, we're going to start at our number 5, like we always do, work our way to number 1. So Greg, you're our guest. We're going to let you kick things off. Your number 5 soundtrack that was better than the movie. What do you got?
Well, I was originally going to start off with the Ramones Rock and Roll High School.
Nice.
But then what happened was,
with PJ Souls,
as you mentioned, it had to be an original soundtrack. And a lot of the Ramones songs that were in that Rock and Roll High School movie weren't original soundtrack stuff, and a lot of them didn't make it. The Ramones songs didn't make it into the soundtrack, so I was like, I'm not too sure. Like the movie was terrible, but like I said, the Ramones music was fantastic. I mean, that's the movie that turned me on to the Ramones, Rock and Roll High School. Yeah. So at the last minute, I pulled an audible because I was going through some stuff today, and I forgot about this absolutely terrible movie from 1987 that has a 36% Rotten Tomatoes rating, and it's a movie called Eat the Rich. And it stars, it doesn't star, but he has an appearance in there, which is Lemmy and the rest of the gang from Motorhead.
Oh, jeez.
Are in that movie. And they have the theme song for it, Eat the Rich, is in there, as well as Orgasmatron, Dr. Rock, Built for Speed. Great soundtrack. The plot of the movie is a waiter who doesn't enjoy working in his high-class restaurant because he finds the customers rude and his coworkers pretentious. He gets fired, and he comes together and forms a gang. And they come in and they secretly overtake the restaurant. And so they go out and find their former coworkers and customers and patrons he didn't used to like. And, well, he goes out and feeds those customers and coworkers to the rich people that are sitting out in the restaurant. So the movie stars Shane McGowan from the Pogues. I got Robbie Coltrane, who, of course, was Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies. That's what he's famous for. It's also got Paul McCartney makes a guest appearance in this movie, as well as Bill Wyman from the Rolling Stones, the former bassist. He made an appearance in here as well. But the big seller for me was, of course, Lemmy and the rest of Motorhead was in this movie, and they provided the soundtrack. So terrible movie. I'm pretty sure absolutely nobody I know other than myself has seen it. But 1987, Eat the Rich, 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. I still think that's a high number. It should be less.
And he's always got to rely on you to come in with that heavy kind of music too. So that's always cool. Derek, number 5 soundtrack that was better than the movie. What are you going to do? Kick us off.
All right. So I'm just going to preface mine by saying, rather than doing an actual list from my best favorite being number 1 and to number like and up from that way, I decided to do a little theme. I feel that we don't represent the 90s very well on this podcast. We tend to do a lot of 80s and a lot of today, and we sort of skip over the 90s. So knowing Greg was here, we were going to get, 15 picks. I decided to stick to the 90s, and largely because 2 or 3 of my picks were already going to be in the 90s. And so for simplicity, I'm just going to do them in the order they were released, starting with my one from the earliest in the 90s, and my last one hits right at the start of 2000. So again, no judgment on like this one's better than that one from me. I'm just going to talk about 5 great soundtracks from the 90s. So
that's fair.
The first one, which arguably this one for a long time was going to be my number 1, is Singles. So Singles was a movie, came out in 1992. Yeah. It was written and directed by Cameron Crowe, starred Bridget Fonda and a bunch of other, big names
Matt
from
Dillon
the 90s.
Was in it, yeah. Kira Sedgwick.
And
I remember that. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So one of the big things with this Singles soundtrack is, and just reading off of some of the websites here, it says it was primarily focused on the ascendant Seattle grunge scene from the early 90s. So again, let's go back in our time machines to the 90s. Late 80s, early 90s music was starting to get really mellow, very lame. You got a lot of like heavy bands doing love ballads, and a lot of the pop songs just started to sound very flat, very the same. It was everything started becoming so mainstream and mellow. And there was a desperate need for a change in music, and like even rock was starting to get a little flat. I mean, there was obviously stuff going on in sort of the edges, but like the mainstream seemed to really just be like petering out. And then in the early 90s, you get this grunge explosion out of Seattle. It's this different sound, this rawness, this sort of, I don't give a crap that I can't play this instrument as well as the next guy, but I got something to say and I got a musical opportunity to express myself. And Singles is sort of the gateway drug for a lot of people who were not really familiar with or into grunge. They didn't know what this was. So here was this major motion picture that came out and this soundtrack. And like the soundtrack was a who's who of grunge bands. And you had Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell, Soundgarden, Mudhoney. You've got, and then of course they had a couple of Smashing Pumpkins are on there, Screaming Trees, and then they even had a couple of songs by Jimi Hendrix, who was also from Seattle, which again was just a part of the movie where they were talking about how the importance of Seattle as a musical backdrop. The soundtrack went on to do very well commercially. It was 2 times platinum. It ended up hitting. They did a countdown of the best grunge albums ever, the Rolling Stone magazine, and it ended up ranking number 19, which I think is pretty high praise considering how many amazing grunge albums there are. And so this is sort of that door opening where you're like, oh, well, what's coming in the 90s? Well, in 1992, you got the Singles soundtrack. The movie was okay. The soundtrack was amazing. And as these bands really started to hit it big and become more popular in the mainstream, like this is that album that people went back to and went, oh my God, how did I miss this when it came out? So the first one on my list is Singles from 1992.
So you're going to represent the 90s. I'm going to represent the 80s here. So all 5 of mine come from the 80s. And in fact, 3 of them come from 1984, including my first one here, number 5, which is Electric Dreams from 1984. So this movie, if you're not familiar with it, and most of you probably aren't, it's this guy builds a computer to help him with his inventions. And it's basically like an AI computer, like HAL in 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? And one day I think he spills like booze on it, and the computer comes to life and it becomes sentient. And it falls in love with his girlfriend. So this movie began my lifelong crush on Virginia Madsen. She was in it. She was really young. And the movie's not very good, but it's very of its time, especially in regard to the sort of the advent of the PC. But the soundtrack, oh man, I love it so much. So Jeff Lynne contributed to it, and Giorgio Moroder composed the score. So Giorgio Moroder, if you're not familiar with him, he had this unique sort of distinctive sound. He did American Gigolo and Cat People, and Greg, he did one of your favorite movies. He scored Scarface as well.
Yeah, he did.
And he also co-wrote this movie's theme song with Philip Oakley from the Human League. Oakley sings the song. The song is called Together in Electric Dreams. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Look it up, listen to it. You probably listen to it and go, oh my God, I know this song. It's very 80s. It's really, really good too, I think. It's catchy. And guys, here's a piece of Canadiana for you. You remember Sportsline on Global TV back in the 80s and 90s with Mark Hebscher and Jim Taddy?
Mark Hebscher. Yep.
During the closing credits, they played this song.
Oh.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Piece of, anyway, so Electric Dreams, 1984. Soundtrack definitely better than the movie. So that's my number 5. Number 4, Greg, what do you got?
I went to the 90s on this one.
Oh, okay.
I'm a massive fan of Godzilla. Love the Godzilla franchise, especially like the original Godzilla series. And if you haven't seen the new Godzilla that came out recently, Godzilla -1, do yourself a favor, go see it. It is that good, and it won an Academy Award. So obviously it's that good. Even my girlfriend, who I went to the movies with to go see this, oh my God, like she could not stand Godzilla movies, but she went with me to this one and actually came out of Godzilla -1 saying that was really good. So Godzilla -1 is definitely worth checking out. But I'm talking about Godzilla from 1998.
Yes, with Matthew Broderick.
Matthew Broderick, yep.
Yeah, that was a massive letdown of a movie. As a matter of fact, it scored 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. 20%, man, that's terrible.
Jeez, that's not good.
It's got Matthew Broderick. It's got Simpsons alumni Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer are in there. Oh, and, of course, French sex symbol Jean Reno.
From Leon, the professional.
Well. Yeah, the professional, man. He took over for Gerard Depardieu as France's #1 sex symbol. Just behind me. So, and
Greg Martin.
Martin, oui.
Yeah.
So the movie was terrible. The CGI was awful. It didn't even look like Godzilla. It looked like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. So it was a terrible movie. But the soundtrack came out with a couple of really good songs off it that, I still have on my Spotify today. First one is a very young Foo Fighters were on there, just starting out, very new. They did a song called A320 on it. It's not a particularly great song. I don't think you hear it live, but it's good to hear some old Foo Fighters. The Wallflowers doing a cover of David Bowie's Heroes, as well as
one of my favorite
Silverchair.
covers.
Yeah, it's a great cover, right? Silverchair was on there. Derek can tell you about my Silverchair experience in New York City. What year was that? That was mid-90s, right?
Yeah, 95, 96 maybe. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and I ended up causing the HMV to sort of start chucking CDs and CD racks when they were playing. So Silverchair was on there. But the big standout was Rage Against the Machine's No Shelter. Oh, fantastic song. It's a big staple in their live show, and it really stuck out, which is weird because, Rage Against the Machine you wouldn't think would, for everything they are and everything they stood for, you didn't think they'd show up in a Hollywood, blockbuster type soundtrack, but they did, and it paid off because it's a really good tune. Like I said, the movie itself, just as a Godzilla fan, that's the Phantom Menace of Godzilla movies. It is that bad, but the soundtrack saved it a little bit. I think that's where the 20% comes from on Rotten Tomatoes was the soundtrack made the movie a little bit better.
There was another song on there too. This is back when he was Puff Daddy. He sampled Cashmere.
That's the one I forgot that.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big song. He was Puff Daddy then, and then he became like P. Diddy, and then he became Diddy, and now he's just like rapey, I guess. I don't know. But
I was kind of avoiding talking about him. That's why I left him off my list. But the one thing I didn't like about him, and that's the reason why, another reason why I don't really have it on there, was he was one of those artists like Hammer that took the idea of sampling and made it and took it too far, where he just basically took other people's music and then put his own lyrics over it. It wasn't a sample.
Right.
So he used Led Zeppelin's Kashmir and
note for note, the whole thing. Yeah.
Note for note.
Yeah.
And then gave Jimmy Page credit for it. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Page did not re-record Kashmir. No. And he just put his own lyrics over it. And I've always felt that to be really insulting. And Hammer and Puff Daddy or whatever he's called would go and do that and say, oh, well, I'm just sampling the music. My argument was always like, okay, if I go to the bulk barn and I try out like a Glossette peanut, a chocolate peanut, I have one, that's sampling. If I eat the whole damn barrel, well, now I'm stealing. And basically he's stealing the whole damn barrel when he does that. So
good point. So number 4 for you, Derek, what do you got?
All right, number 4, we're moving up in the 90s here. We go to 1994. We're going with the film The Crow and the soundtrack that came with it. So Greg can certainly attest to this. We were at school in the 90s when The Crow came out, and every other room had a poster of The Crow. This was like a staple in the dorms. And the soundtrack, again, music's starting to shift in the 90s, and so this was more like that goth sound. You had the kind of music you had on this CD was like darker and like more anger, and you had 9 Inch Nails doing the cover of the Joy Division tune Dead Souls. You have Stone Temple Pilots. You got The Cure, but you also had some heavier bands on there. You had Rollins Band, you had Helmet, you had Pantera, and so but it was all like this dark feel, like this The Crow was like this influential movie on a whole group of people in the 90s where they wanted to be that gothic, the pale face, the dark hair, the I hate the world around me, everything's terrible, just the downer attitude. But this soundtrack sort of had the music that exemplified that idea, even if not all the songs were necessarily about that. It just, again, it sort of helped create a mood. And I mean, I like the Crow movie. I think the first one is pretty good. I mean, it's famous for being the last movie where Brandon Lee was in. He got killed tragically on the set of the movie, being Bruce Lee's son, that is. And so it lives on in notoriety for that. And they obviously did a couple of sequels, and I think they did a remake, and I think they're doing yet another remake. And it's based on an independent comic book from like the 80s. So there's that tie to it as well. So I don't think that The Crow as a franchise is ever going to go away, but this was the first one to hit the theaters, and the soundtrack was a massive part of it. Like, I don't think this movie would have been anywhere near as successful without the music or without this soundtrack. And just the elements that were on this really set a mood, and it was incredibly popular. Let me just see here. I got some notes here. It peaked at number 1 on the Billboard's top 200 album charts. They've sold 3.8 million copies in the U.S. It was certified triple platinum. Like, this soundtrack was killer in 1994, and you can't imagine the movie without this soundtrack. And so you've got a movie that was pretty good, and you got a soundtrack that was just outstanding. So my second pick on here, or my number 4, I guess, would be The Crow from 1994.
All right, for my number 4.
I'll be the first one to put it out there. I saw the trailers recently for that new Crow movie just before Furiosa, and boy, it looks awful.
It probably is.
I'm telling you, man, it's going to bomb.
Yeah, probably will. Okay, so my number 4, I'm going to stick with 1984. No surprise there. I'm going to go with The Last American Virgin. So there was a lot of teen sex comedies in the 80s. It was an entire film genre back then. Some were good, some were just okay, some were like awful. This one falls into the latter category, at least in my opinion. Although it was one of the first of several topless scenes for Diane Franklin. So it had that. But the movie was not very good. But the soundtrack was amazing. So it has all these like songs and bands that were just like really hot at the time. And it gave them, this movie basically gave them a vehicle sort of to get their songs out to people. It had Do 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 by the Police. Oh man, there was Oingo Boingo was on it. The Devo Whip It was on there. The Cars were featured in multiple songs. Even U2, who was relatively like smaller then, they had I Will Follow was on there. And then of course the Gleaming Spires song, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls?
Oh, I remember that from Revenge of the Nerds.
I was going to say, do you remember there was another 1984 movie too? It was Revenge of the Nerds, when they were doing the frat party to impress UN Jefferson. Right before Lewis puts on something he thinks UN will like better. Remember, he puts on Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and Lamar takes it off. Wait, anyway, but Last American Virgin in 1984 is my number 4. So that's it. All right, number 3, Greg, over to you.
My number 3 is going to be one of those ones where people are going to be like, yeah, you know what, you're crazy. That movie was good. But I've always felt that this movie was overrated. And I was talking to Derek before we started doing this, and we were talking about this movie. And I said, I'm pretty sure the only way I've watched this movie is like after midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, inebriated or high. And that's the only way that I think people would think that it's a good movie. It scored 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow. What is it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like sitting there going, wow, really? Okay. Which is Flash Gordon. And Queen soundtrack for Flash Gordon.
This movie's great. I love that movie.
For saying Flash Gordon was a terrible movie.
No.
But come on, man. When you peel back the layers of this onion, Flash Gordon is not a great movie. Like it's poorly acted. It's cheesy acted. It's a bad script.
It's dubbed over for most of it.
1 o'clock in the morning when you're ordering pizza and having pop before bed and edibles. But man. So, anyways, of course, you got Sam Jones and Max von Sydow and Timothy Dalton in this movie, which makes a good cast, but it just didn't work for me. And to me, it was the music of Queen saved it. To me, that's what was just the sequences where the Queen music was played. It's predominant throughout the movie, and there's just something about when Queen comes on. It makes things better. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a commercial or elevator music while you're using the bathroom at the mall. It just makes for better music. And so of course you got the Flash theme, which was great. A lot of people I read where they use the Queen's version of Wedding March for their wedding that they use that's here in this movie. And of course they had a sort of some success on the charts with the song The Hero. But in today's day and age, soundtracks just aren't a big deal anymore. Like, you don't really hear about the soundtrack very often anymore. And so when Flash Gordon came out and Queen was the entire soundtrack, like every song on the album was Queen, that was a big deal. And by today's standard, that still stands. That's a big deal that you would use one band to record your entire soundtrack. So again, I know people are going to argue with me that Flash Gordon was a good movie, but I thought it was awful. And Queen made it bearable.
I wouldn't say that Flash Gordon was a good movie, but here's the thing. It was campy and it was supposed to be sort of tongue-in-cheek. And so when you take it at that level, you can appreciate it. At least I do anyway. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, but there's a point where there's campy and then there's over campy. Yeah. Like it almost bordered on like Mexican soap opera campy. Like it was just over the top campy for me.
Yeah, I guess that was the appeal for me. So number 3, Derek, what is yours?
I just want to sort of throw in an honorable mention, sort of half pick. So Greg mentioned Flash Gordon with Queen soundtrack. So one of the things I was considering putting on my list that I didn't was the movie Highlander, because it also featured a lot of music from Queen. But apparently they never officially released a soundtrack to the movie The Highlander. Yet a lot of Queen songs were on there. It had A Kind of Magic, One Year of Love, Who Wants to Live Forever, even Hammer to Fall was in the movie. But yet they never put out an official soundtrack, even though all those songs were used in the movie. But all those songs ended up featuring on Queen's next album, A Kind of Magic. And so that's considered to sort of be soundtrack adjacent to the Highlander film. So I'm glad that Greg had Flash Gordon on the list, because you can never give Queen enough love. So Anyway, on to my number 3. So we're keep moving through the 90s here. We did 92, we did 94, moving to 1995. Again, we're going to take a slight shift in direction in musical tones here, and we're going with Batman Forever from 1995. So by this point, we had 2 Batman movies featuring Michael Keaton that were actually doing pretty well. And then they got rid of Tim Burton as the director. They brought on Joel Schumacher. They recast Batman as Val Kilmer, and the movie was not great. Many will argue that this is one of the worst Batman films, ever released. It's either this one or the one that came right after it, but the Joel Schumacher ones were not great. In the moment, they did very well. They earned a lot of money, but really compared to what we got a couple, 10 years later with the new Batman movies, these ones look back and they're just like terrible. But the soundtrack for this movie, again, was a representation of sort of the kind of music that was happening at the time. It ended up sort of with a couple of huge hits. It had the song Kiss from a Rose by Seal, which was a massive hit. In a lot of charts, it ended up being the #1 song of the year. It definitely reached #1. It had Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me from U2, which, again, some YouTube fans think is like that underrated hit. A lot of people are just like, nah, I don't like it. Personally, I love it. It's very 90s. It's got that 90s YouTube feel. But it also had, again, some of the other up and coming bands, both sort of like alternative and rock, and sort of the bands that sort of straddled that line. You had bands like The Offspring were on here. You had PJ Harvey was on here, Mazzy Star, you Flaming Lips. So you had a lot of that sort of crossover where you were having some of the alternative artists with some of the more popular artists. And but again, this soundtrack did very, very well. It said it had five singles from the soundtrack ended up hitting the charts and charting well. The soundtrack itself reached #5 on the Billboard Top 200. Like, again, this was a big deal in 95. You had grunge was very heavy. You had that alternative music from The Crow that was very, very heavy, very popular. And then this was 95 was where you started to get a little bit more of we'll call it alt rock. And this was a good example of songs that were starting to lean in that direction. So this is my number 3 pick here, Batman Forever from 95.
Nice. Okay, my number 3. I'm going back to 1980. I'm picking Xanadu. So this might sound blasphemous coming from me, but Xanadu was not a very good movie. I mean, I have the comic book version of it, Derek. Remember, I bought it when we were together at a Comic-Con once. Yep. I watched this movie on the movie channel when I was a kid, but I mean, come on. A movie that combines roller skating and disco. Greg, I'm going to go out on a limb here and take a really wild guess that you absolutely hate disco.
No, you'd be wrong, man. I actually do have some disco on my Spotify. I'm not a complete hater of disco. I hate country music more than I hate disco. Like, I'm not like a disco fanatic. I think it's one of those things where as I got older, it kind of grew on me, especially the funkier aspects of it kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I don't hate disco, but man, I hate Xanadu.
Oh, well, there you go. See, I'm surprised because you like heavier stuff, you like heavy metal and, that kind of stuff. I thought you'd hate disco. I kind of like disco too. Like, I thought it was, especially because it's such a slice of life from that time. Like, it was such, very few kind of genres of music you listen to go like, man, that is from a certain period of time. But disco definitely was. So on the soundtrack, there were songs like Magic that Olivia Newton-John did. And she also did a duet with Cliff Richard, Suddenly, which was big. And Electric Light Orchestra with Jeff Lynne. They went, full on with their disco phase here with a bunch of songs on the soundtrack. Most notably was All Over the World. Such an outstanding song. But the big song from the movie was, by Olivia Newton-John, of course, the title track, Xanadu. So the movie wasn't very good, but the soundtrack I actually really like in terms of disco. So it's a little bit of a, guilty pleasure, I guess, of mine. But Xanadu is my number 3. So, Greg, we're on to number 2.
Well, I was going to say my number 2, but then you said I don't like disco, so maybe I'm going to change it to that Village People movie that was with Steve Guttenberg.
Can't Stop the Music, right?
I forget what the name of that movie was called, but for some reason...
Can't Stop the Music is what it was called.
That's not what it's called? Can't Stop the Music? Yep. I saw it when I was in university, and I was like, this movie is awful. But no, actually, in all honesty, the next one coming up for me, 1993, it scored 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it has an amazing cast. It just fell short of, I guess, script writing was terrible on it, and that's Judgment Night. I don't know. Did you guys see that?
No.
Yep, sure did.
Nope.
Yeah. It's got Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Stephen Dorff, Jeremy Piven, Dennis Leary, Peter Green. If you don't know who that is, that's the guy who gets shot in the by Van, whatever his name is there in Pulp Fiction, and Everlast from House of Pain. He's in this too. Movie was terrible, but terrible is a bad word. It was manageably bad, but it was okay. But the reason I love this soundtrack so much is it combines hip hop artists with heavy metal artists and some alternative artists. But the music collaborations, they worked so well on there that you actually, my dream back then was that they would have done a tour, like a festival tour, where they brought all these bands out together on like a one-day fest. Like you had, for example, Slayer teaming up with Ice-T to do Disorder. You had Biohazard teaming up with Onyx to do the main song Judgment Night. You had House of Pain teaming up with Helmet to do Just Another Victim. Another one that stuck out for me that was fantastic was Faith No More teamed up with Samoan hip-hop group, the Booyah Tribe, and they did Another Body Murdered. This soundtrack came out in 93, and so you're talking, at least 30 years ago, 31 years ago, and I still have the full soundtrack on my Spotify, like every single song. It's just so good. So many collaborations that worked, just combining the world of hip-hop and the world of heavy metal. Oh, yeah, there's also Cypress Hill and Pearl Jam team up and do a song together on there, too, which is crazy. So it's a great collaboration effort. Just a lot of good tunes, a lot of heavy stuff, and it's fantastic. If you do get a chance, like I say, and you're looking for something and you haven't listened to it before, go on to Spotify, take a listen to it. I'm pretty sure you're going to find something on there that you'll like. It's really, really good.
Okay. Number 2, Derek, over to you.
All right. For number 2 for me, we're going to keep sliding through the 90s. We're going to go from 95 from my last pick to 96 for this one. This was William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet from 1996. Oh. So this is the one directed by Baz Luhrmann, where, you take the classic Shakespeare play and you use that, you set it in the modern world, but you keep all the original dialogue, and then he colors it musically with all of this great pop culture music from the time. And again, it was a who's who and a what's what of who was popular at the time, as well as bands that were sort of just breaking out. This is one of those albums where I actually had the CD in my car when it came out, and it was one of those ones that I would just put on and hit random, and like all the songs were amazing, even the ones that weren't big hits, even the ones that were by bands maybe I didn't know that well. But oh my God, like, so for example, one of the bands that's on here is Radiohead, their song Talk Show Host. Personally, I can't stand Radiohead, and I know it's a hot take. A lot of people think Radiohead's one of the best bands of the 90s, and some people say the best band ever. I just have never been a fan of Radiohead. I just don't like them. But this song I love for some reason. And it's on the soundtrack. You also have song number 1, Crush from Garbage. It's got a song on here by Everclear. It's got the Butthole Surfers. It's this sort of weird mix of bands that were sort of coming into their own here in the mid to late 90s. Again, the 90s was a very unusual time for music, where it was like a lot of sounds trying to break out and find their own identity. This was when you had the internet was starting to become a thing, so people that maybe had ideas on what music should be were able to sort of find their audiences in areas maybe they hadn't traditionally been able to find it. And this is when music really started to splinter. And this is a good example, I think, of sort of that late 90s sound where it's not quite mainstream. It's definitely got that alternative feel. But it's just, again, I'm struggling for the right. I feel like Yancey. I can't find the words to describe how I talk about this album. But this is, again, the movie was fine. Again, you can't really knock Shakespeare. Shakespeare is who Shakespeare was. The movie was fine. It was an interesting exercise. The cast was good. You look back on it now, I don't feel it holds up that well. I feel it's a little cheesy, as some of the performances are just like clearly the actors are going for it. It's just over the top. But the soundtrack for this is just so good. And so, again, you've got this example of a movie that was, just okay, but you've got this soundtrack that is just killer. So This was my number two as we slide through the 90s was Romeo and Juliet from 1996.
Nice. All right, my number two. I'm going to go back to 1986, Maximum Overdrive. So,
good pick.
As a teenager, I loved reading Stephen King novels. Like, I just love them. But the thing is, for me, like I find his books don't translate all that well to the big screen. I know that might sound crazy, but I feel like he's such a descriptive author that it makes it kind of hard to recreate the experience visually, if that makes any sense. Although of his books, short stories have been made into movies. So, Derek, you're a betting man.
Yes,
Number of feature films derived from Stephen King books. If I set the over-under at 50, what side are you going to take in?
Wow. I thought you were going to set it at like 30. I mean, the logic would dictate that I got to take the under, but if you're making it that high, I'm going to say it's over. I'm going to go with the over.
All right, Greg, you want in on this action?
Well, again, I'm like Derek. I because you're throwing out the large number, I have to think it's over. I was gonna go with Derek and say like in the 20s to 30s, because I know a lot of his short stories, they don't recognize it because it's not like his horror stuff. I happen to think his short story stuff that's not horror are his best stuff. Like
I agree.
Stand by Me and Green Mile and Shawshank. But I guess for fun I'll go just so I can play devil's advocate a little bit here, and I'm going to go under, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was over 50, but I'll take the under.
If we're talking just feature films, it's 53.
Wow.
But if you count all adaptations of his work or anything derived from his work, all TV shows and movies worldwide, it's over 350.
Holy cow.
Jeez.
Wow.
So there's been a few good Stephen King movies, some really good ones like The Shining and Shawshank Redemption, like Greg just mentioned, and Misery and Stand By Me mentioned. Carrie was another one. Although I will mention, do not watch Carrie on the TVs in the airplanes as your in-flight movie. So I had never seen Carrie, believe it or not. So I actually put it on as my in-flight entertainment a few years back. It was on the menu, so I picked it. And lots of naked teenage girls in the locker room, like full frontal to open up this movie. I was like, oh my God, I get all these looks from my fellow passengers, Did I turn it off? Well, I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. But anyway, so Stephen King got so popular, they basically said to him, make anything you want. So he wrote a screenplay and was even allowed to direct Maximum Overdrive. And you can say whatever you want about it. It was a lot of fun to watch at times, but it was not very good. But that soundtrack, man. So Stephen King basically got AC/DC to do the soundtrack because they were like his favorite band. And the soundtrack rocks, like everything AC/DC ever did. Like there's Who Made Who and Chase the Ace, Shake Your Foundations, and the instrumental DT, which totally kicks ass. So the soundtrack is fantastic. So Maximum Overdrive is number 2 on my list. All right, so now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're at number 1. So Greg, what have you got for your number 1 soundtrack better than the movie?
Well, this one here again, I think I'm going to get some people kind of getting in my face about it, but I'm going to go with it anyways. 1984, it's Prince, Purple Rain.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you. The soundtrack's incredible. I mean, Prince is just an incredible artist. Let's Go Crazy, Darling Nikki, When Doves Cry, I Would Die For You. I mean, these are all monster hits that, get played on the XM radio all the time. I mean, everybody knows Let's Go Crazy. I mean, what wedding doesn't play Let's Go Crazy when you're there, right? But it was the in-betweens when there was no music going on that the acting was not fantastic. Prince himself is not a great actor. I love his aura. I love his mystique. There's just something about Prince, especially Dave Chappelle captured it so well in that basketball game. He was just such an aura, mystique to him. But I mean, Apollonia, if she did not look good with her clothes off, I have no idea how she got any acting jobs in Hollywood. She was terrible. And Morris Day, I mean, he would have done fantastic in Flash Gordon. He was that campy, that over the top.
He was so over the top. He was going for it in every scene.
He was, man. He went hard in the paint. He went hard in the paint on going overboard on that. Like his song, Jungle Love, fantastic song.
So good. Prince wrote it.
Everybody does that. Yep. But his acting, I mean, I don't think he did any acting after that, and thankfully, because like his acting, I mean, I could have done a better job in Morris Day in this movie than he did, but again, the soundtrack really saved it. And you know, people basically went to see, I mean, I know my sister, I think, went to see this movie like 5 times in the theater. And again, it was just because people went to hear the songs. You could have had no music whatsoever and just played the songs, and people would have gone to see that. And the storyline was inconsequential in this movie. It was all about the music. So Prince, Purple Rain for sure.
Good pick. All right, Derek, you're number 1.
So, although I'm going to stick with my 90s theme, this Purple Rain was my number 1 as well on my original list, but I was confident one of you would have it, and I knew it would get a mention. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna just stick with my theme. But if I had just stuck with my gut, no question, Purple Rain would have been my number 1 pick. Instead, I'm going to just end off my 90s list with one that actually came out in early 2000, just sort of as that culmination. And this is the John Woo film Mission Impossible 2, starring Tom Cruise. So I think the Mission Impossible franchise is amazing. I think most people will agree MI2 is by far the worst of these Mission Impossible movies. And I was kind of surprised when they ended up doing a part 3 because I thought Mission Impossible 2 was that bad. But the soundtrack, so up until now, all the 90s stuff I was talking about, it's been alternative, it's been grunge, it's been, you know, the mainstream stuff and, you know, the alt rock. But I'm like, Mission Impossible 2 was a lot harder. You know, it's got that rock and roll, that almost heavy metal. Well, not almost, has heavy metal. Like it was more this is rock is back. This was like very much, hey, you might have missed us in the 90s, but we're still here. And so, I mean, right from the very first song, Take a Look Around by Limp Bizkit, which really samples, not eating the whole barrel, the Mission Impossible theme, which a lot of people just like lost their mind when they heard this song. It has I Disappear by Metallica, which was another huge hit. But I mean, again, the representation of musicians on this, it's got Foo Fighters, it's got Rob Zombie, it's got Butthole Surfers, it's got Chris Cornell, Godsmack. Like it's got, you know, again, it's sort of a who's who of who's big in rock at the time. And I mean, Greg, you can certainly speak to this more than I can because this is definitely more up your alley. What did you think of this MI2 album?
Oh, I thought, again, I'm not really a big soundtrack guy. Like, you know, I've never really enjoyed the idea of the soundtrack. I have very few soundtracks in my collection, but yeah, MI2 was definitely one of the ones that I had in there. It was just a great collaboration of like, it went well with the style of what Mission Impossible is, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like just that high octane, high action sequences kind of thing. It went really well. And again, at the time they found the right artists who were, you know, the focus of the popularity at that time, the Metallica, the Limp Bizkit. It was as far as soundtracks go, I think it's great. Like I was mentioning to you when we were talking just a few minutes ago, I actually used Metallica I Disappear as a quote in my letter of resignation for one of my jobs.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So anyway, that again, like I said at the top, my list wasn't number 1 being my best and so on. I literally just chronologically picked these 5 ones that were representational of the music from the 90s, ending with this one in 2000. So this is the last one on my list. But like I said, if we were actually ranking them, there's no question Purple Rain would have been my number 1. So anyway, Chris, over to you.
So Purple Rain would have been your number 1. It was Greg's number 1, and we are all on the same page. Because my number 1 is Purple Rain from 1984. Nice. We should bring Yancey back on to do this one.
No kidding.
I don't think too many people would argue with us, guys, that Purple Rain, the movie, sucked. It did.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
But Purple Rain, the soundtrack, one of the greatest movie soundtracks of all time. And I would argue it's one of the greatest albums, period, of all time. You could argue it's better than Thriller. I mean, that's a topic for another day.
You'd be arguing, but
yeah.
I think there's a conversation to be had there. It definitely one of the best albums of the 80s, hands down. Top 3, no question.
You know, and so it was released as the album. It was released as the soundtrack to the movie, but the thing is, the movie also had other songs in it that weren't on the album. You know, Greg, you mentioned Morris Day and the time when they did Jungle Love, but they also did The Bird, which by the way, used as the walk-up music for Coco Beware. in the WWF back in the 80s. So like I said, the movie wasn't very good, but the best parts for me in this movie were when Prince had those sort of showdowns with Morris Day and the Time on stage. God, they were okay. And of course the scene where Apollonia went swimming in Lake Minnetonka, there was that. But the Prince songs are so good, like Purple Rain and When Doves Cry. And of course, my all-time favorite guitar solo, Let's Go Crazy. This soundtrack kicks some serious butt. And the thing is, too, it's just synonymous with the 80s. So it's my number one for sure. So
and I will say it is actually better than Thriller. Michael Jackson's Thriller is huge, obviously. I mean, every household in the world has a copy of Thriller in it. But the difference is that Michael Jackson was handed music and asked to sing over it. Quincy Jones basically made the music and Michael Jackson sang over Quincy Jones music, whereas Prince composed all that music. That's all Prince is doing. He played the guitar. He did everything in there. He played the drums.
Everything.
He composed everything on there. And for me, that's what makes it a better album than Thriller, is the fact that Prince actually composed it, whereas Michael Jackson was basically gift wrapped the music.
And to take it a step further, in the movie, his rival, Morris Day and the Time, he wrote their songs too. He was just so good. They didn't mention that in the movie, but it was definitely the case.
But Prince sold a lot of songs to people like Sinead O'Connor and Sheena Easton and the
Bangles,
Sheila E. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Did you guys see that documentary about We Are the World with Sheila E. in it?
Yes.
Yeah, Derek mentioned it just a couple weeks ago.
Did you not feel bad for poor Sheila E.?
Yeah, they just wanted her there because she thought,
to try and get Prince to come to the studio. I felt so bad for Sheila E., man.
So we all are in agreement. Then really, Prince, Purple Rain is the number one, soundtrack that was better than the movie. That's for sure. So, all right, what do you say on that note, gentlemen? Now that we're all in agreement, that we go and have some fun together. Here we go.
Fun with Caveman.
So, Greg, you're our guest, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. We're going to play a little game that is called...
Ladies and gentlemen, name that tune!
So, Greg, you're going to be really familiar with this one because we've done this one before, okay? I'm gonna play you songs, and you have to guess which movie they come from. All the songs are very prominent songs on a movie soundtrack. But the only catch is our producer tells me that we can't play the actual songs. We might get sued. So therefore, I'm being told that I have to sing the songs for you. So,
oh, man.
So last time we did this, Greg, you kicked butt. Yeah. So, it was because of my incredible singing, I'm sure. So this time I'm going to make it a little bit harder. All right. So since I got to pick the songs for this segment, they're all from old movies. Nothing new at all. Like I would know them anyway. But
Chris, you're not going to sing something from the Black Panther soundtrack?
No, exactly. No. So, no, Derek, you can be the lifeline here. Okay. Remember, I'm looking for the title of the movie. Okay. So I don't want the title of the song, just the movie. Okay.
All right, no disco songs though, man.
No, let's hope not. All right. All right, here we go. She's a maniac on the floor, and she's dancing like she's never danced before. Go.
All right, man, I got to tell you something. When I was like 10 years old, that was the movie that made me realize I like girls in a different way. But after you singing that, I'm like, maybe not so much anymore. But that's definitely Flashdance. Or if you've seen the 1980s adult film Flashdance.
Yes, not to be confused with Flesh Gordon.
Not to be confused.
From your number two. Yeah, that was right. It was Flashdance, right? Maniac by Michael Cimbello. Okay. You've got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got troubles. I got 'em too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We'll stick together and we'll see it through. 'Cause you got a friend in me.
You're actually better than Randy Newman, but that's Toy Story.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, Randy Newman. All right. Let me just think here. This one here. This one's gonna be hard for me to sing. Take my breath away. Take my breath away.
Normally I would say stop talking to me, Goose. That was awful. Top Gun.
Yes, Take My Breath Away by Berlin. Terry Nunn, who was saying that. She almost got the part of Princess Leia. Did you know that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, she tried out for that part. She posed in Penthouse when she was a minor back in 1976. Probably why Lucas didn't end up casting her. But anyway. Oh, by the way, that song, Take My Breath Away, was written by Giorgio Moroder, the Electric Dreams guy. Yeah. And the guy from Scarface. Nice. Okay. Once in your life, you'll find her, someone who turns your heart around. Next thing you know, you're closing down the town. When you get caught between the moon and New York City, you know it's crazy, but it's true. 'Cause the best that you can do is fall in love.
Dude, that song was awful. And I've never heard it in my life. And
I know it. Derek, can you be the lifeline?
Yes, that was Arthur's theme from the movie Arthur.
Yes, that's right. Sung by Christopher Cross, not to be confused with Christopher McBrien. Okay.
Or not to be confused with crisscross.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Jump. All right. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles cry on a mountain high. Love lift us up where we belong, far from the world below, up where the clear winds blow.
Dude, that was from An Officer and a Gentleman.
Yes.
And not to be confused with 80s adult film An Officer and Not So Gentleman.
That's right. Or I remember on SCTV, An Officer and a Gentile with Sid Dithers.
Yes. I remember that one. Yes.
All right. It must have been love, but it's over now. It must have been good, but I lost it somehow. It must have been love, but it's over now. From the moment we touched till the time had run out.
It's Ace of Base, right? It's singing that?
No.
Roxette. Oh, it's Roxette. Yes. Oh, Pretty Woman.
Roxette is right, but what's the movie? What's the movie it came from?
Was it Pretty Woman?
Oh, yes. There you go. All right.
Don't kiss me on the lips.
I've been passing time watching trains go by all of my life. Lying on the sand watching seabirds fly. Wishing there would be someone waiting home for me. Something's telling me it might be you all of my life. Any guesses?
The love theme from Karate Kid Part 2?
No. Derek?
No, I never heard it before.
Oh, it's from Tootsie in 1982. It Might Be You by Stephen Bishop. Nominated for an Oscar.
Sure.
Okay.
Not a big fan of the movie.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops keep falling on my head. They keep falling on my head.
Not Singing in the Rain.
No. Paul Newman.
No.
Is it?
Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Any guesses, Greg?
Oh, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Yes! Very good. DJ Thomas, written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. There you go. All right, so you did pretty good. Derek had to bail out a couple times, but overall, it's just wonderful singing. Got you the answers. So, Greg,
I'll be honest with you, I'm not buying the Chris McBrien soundtrack.
No, I don't blame you. It's definitely worse than the movie. That's possible. In reverse of our title. So there you go. So we got that. Greg, thanks a lot for coming back and joining us, my friend. You're going to come back again sometime, right?
Absolutely, man. Anytime you call, I will be here.
That's great. You are, like I say, you are a resident music expert, but we definitely will have you on to do some movies and stuff like that at some point. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I like going out of my comfort zone. It's fun. This was good. I thank you guys for having me on today. Like I said, getting a week to do the topic and go back in time and listen to a whole bunch of stuff I hadn't heard in a while. I had a good week doing that. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So speaking of movies to review, it is my turn to nominate a movie for next time. Last time out, Derek, you had me watch Brewster's Millions, directed by Walter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to have us go back and watch another Walter Hill movie. And tie things in here. This time it's Eddie Murphy's big screen debut. We're going to watch 48 Hours from 1982.
Oh, nice.
To come back and review it. Something a little bit different.
I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah, let's do that. So until then, I'm Chris McBrien on behalf of myself and Derek Myers and Greg Martin saying thanks for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.